Final Fantasy XI pulls from a rich history of games to create its wide array of enemies and their attacks, and it's one of the aspects of its design that makes it so special. In this video, I'll be going through some of the more frustrating attacks that monsters and beastmen could employ, and why they were so memorable. So hey guys, it's Hunt4Games, bringing you a healthy mix of videos on new releases and MMOs, and nostalgia trips to the classics that made us fall in love with games in the first place. And with hundreds of enemy types in Final Fantasy XI, there is plenty of nostalgia to draw upon here, so let's get right into it. First off, thanks to YouTube user Kenny Loggins for suggesting this video. Any longtime player of Final Fantasy XI has a personal list of most hated enemy attacks, but it's not often we actually think about why this is so important to defining the success of the game, so I appreciate you throwing the idea out there. To clarify, these movesets are, for the most part, enemies that were still considered to be squishy enough to level up on. They're annoying because we as players dealt with them over and over and over again, but they were still sometimes the best option available. Which is why we even bother with this first one, those damn Mandragora in the jungles. Because they were just so delectably non-threatening. They didn't really have any heavy-hitting moves or defense bonuses to throw up, but they did have one of the most annoying leveling moves in the game, Dreamflower. Dreamflower, like its name would suggest, is a big ol' AoE sleeping pill for the party. At the level you're dealing with it, you just sort of have to eat it and wait until people get up. Rarely it could cause a legitimate problem if it was just like really poorly timed, but for the most part it just slowed everything down in the most uninteresting way. As a player, you just had to sit and watch, waiting desperately for sleep to wear off. The only ways this would happen were either by it just running out of time, a timer by the way that you couldn't see, an enemy hitting you and doing damage, or another player tossing you a cure. If everyone's asleep, no cures are coming your way. Have you ever hoped to get smacked in the face by the enemy? Have you? I have desperately craved this. Regardless, though, early on this is frustrating, but a low-level sleep is fairly tame as far as status effects go. Nothing compared to some of the others, like petrification, which, you know, lizards perform on you like 15 levels earlier. Despite how annoying sleep could be, there were plenty of ways to sneak out of it, and if a healer was far enough away, they might avoid Dreamflower entirely. White mages do not have Stona in the dunes, so you're out of the fight for the time being if you get hit with Baleful Gaze. Of course, at those levels, every player is relatively weak, so taking one of the party members out of play for a bit with status effects wasn't as much of a game changer as it could be later on. At lower levels, far more dangerous was straight up damage, and none more common than a goblin's bomb toss. Bomb toss was something that players would learn early to hate. It has nice AoE fire damage that could occasionally just critical hit if a goblin managed to drop the bomb. This could be devastating, if not outright just kill people, and it only got worse through the levels. Few enemies are as annoying as when you first encounter them in MMOs, but goblins, with essentially an unchanging moveset, were equally deadly in Bibiki Bay as they were in the dunes all those years before. While adorable with its charm, as the goblin really just drops the bomb, it just sort of tumbles at its feet, it's memorable due to its danger. Eventually, bomb toss could be stunned, but goblins love to do it all the time, and stuns can be few and far between depending on your party makeup. But that's sort of the point I'm trying to make. Someday you'd be making a party, discussing the goblins you'd be taking on, and say, we should probably get a stun to stop that bomb toss. Everyone in the party would be familiar with every move goblins perform because you'd fought them for so many years. But it wasn't just the repetition that keeps that moveset fresh in your mind, it was the danger, the visceral impact to your experience, and yeah, a little bit of the charm. Goblins actually do reach out to pull out a little black classic Looney Tunes bomb with a fuse on it. That shit is memorable. Of course, no one does straight up damage quite like the next two, Cactuars and Tonberries. We've chatted about Tonberries a lot lately in previous videos, but the short version is they have one of the highest damage outputs of the game with everyone's grudge. A single target attack that pulls on the record of all your past kills against that race and increases its damage based on that number. Cactuars have their classic 1000 needles, dealing exactly 1000 damage to the whole party, spread, fortunately, evenly. This meant that you had to be pretty brave son of a bitch to tackle them alone, and pretty desperate as a party to camp them. While 1000 damage isn't too bad every once in a while, they do it consistently enough to be a huge pain. They more just add to the Final Fantasy feel than anything else. They're pretty worthless as a target. The important thing to learn from these enemies is that you grow to despise them. 10, 15, 20 levels above them and they would still be a threat, because the damage they do wasn't necessarily mitigated by your level or gear. Final Fantasy XI had a way of making you feel at risk no matter how powerful you'd become. Not always because of a risk of links or aggro, but just because the enemies themselves effectively cheated. But damage itself still wasn't the real threat in this game, and anyone who disagrees with that hasn't fought a Morbol in a long time. As frustrating as the previous two enemies were, I'd fight them for hours, party against them even, over a single fight with a Morbol. Morbol had their classic Final Fantasy's bad breath implemented fantastically in the series' first online experience. Silence, paralyze, slow, blind, poison, bind, hell, even gravity. Oh, along with just straight up damage. These guys shut you the hell down. And then there was nothing you could do about it except slowly await your fate. Even white mages cringe at these things. Hell, possibly even more so. They're just the worst. But that really is a worst case scenario reference. There were plenty more common enemies that were pretty high on the frustration meter. Thousand Eyes, Gorals, Wyverns, all performing paralysis techniques that would quite literally prevent you from even being able to hit your oh shit button 2 hour. Like nothing else, a bad paralyze gave quiet players their voice as they begged for their white mage to take it off. Seriously, I'd seen players that had never spoken once before in the game be like, "Excuse me sir, please paralinea me." It's hard to convey the frustration to someone who's never played, but with abilities taking 3, 5, 10 minutes to become available sometimes, wasting that and seeing your character is paralyzed is one of the worst feelings in this game. And enemies that did it love to do it all the time. On the less drastic side of that scale are moves like attack downs or accuracy downs. Little bats love to pull this shit with slipstream, supersonic, sonic boom. I think one of those was the big bat, but I can't remember which. And while it's not full of the same controller throwing frustration as paralyzed, eventually you came to hate those little icons. No matter how fast your party was, if you didn't have a way to deal with these effects, you would just slow the hell down. Those little down icons make you subconsciously feel that you're fighting with your hands tied behind your back, that anything you try is probably just going to miss or do no damage anyway. They were the worst, and bats had a way of reapplying them as soon as that white mage finally got around to taking them off of you. And that's why status effects were so much worse. Depending on the severity, they could cripple your ability. Crawlers using sticky thread on your ninja, boosting the recast time on his semi by what seemed like hours. Dalmel using Sonic Wave on your Paladin, bringing them down to the level of casually geared adventurer. Pucks throwing out an Obfuscate right as your weapon skilled, causing you to waste your TP and ruin the skill chain because Flash is an unstoppable force and one can only choose to submit. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that players hated, but I still remember it over a decade past when I first played. That kind of impact is important in any game, but it's crucial in an MMO. It gave the world depth and feeling. Vana'diel's mobs and beastmen had a richness to them. You'd see certain enemy types and immediately feel a flurry of emotions relative to your current job, whether or not you were in a group and your knowledge of what they were capable of. Even if it was an area you'd never been before and you saw a rabbit, you'd be like, shit, they do that little blind thing. If I get blinded, I'm screwed. MMOs these days have a way of just silently affecting you with mildly annoying damage and effects as you play, because to do more would require too much coordination between non-communicating players, and would drive away people that become too quickly frustrated with any level of difficulty they're presented with. But I don't think that's a fair understanding of the player base. I think players crave that difficulty. There's just a perceived unfairness whenever a game doesn't appear to be perfectly balanced. But I think that unbalance is what gave this game life. Different jobs are better or worse at countering different effects in Final Fantasy XI. Ninjas might risk Dalmel's Berserk, knowing they won't get hit with most of their attacks. Silence is miserable for Darks, Blues, or other casters, but Warriors, Dragoons, and Monks could get by just fine. Fighting Crabs might want to get a Red Mage Bard, or even a Thief with Acid Bolts, because damn, that defense boost from Scissor Guard can be a bad time. Something that slows, better work to get something with a race in your party. Knowledge of the world and your options as a player made it feel like there was truly more out there. Your experience was unique, and you may feel more frustration or joy at seeing certain enemies than others. While enemies like bees doing Final Sting used to drive me nuts back in the day, now I just desperately miss and crave that uniqueness. That self-destructing enemies could be valuable because of the XP they'd provide, if you could somehow mitigate the risk of all that damage they'd throw out. That utility and flexibility mattered because some of the numerous powerful challenges that you'd face. Of course, having said all of that, seriously, screw Calibri. No, there is no value to Calibri, who literally said, we're going to be so weak, it'll be worth fighting us, but you're not going to have fun because we will take your TP away, always right before you're ready to weapon skill. We will reflect your magic because screw you, that's why, and we will literally stick our long pink birdie necks right down your throat to steal back your food somehow, because if there's anything Final Fantasy XI needed, it was a way to literally lose a full stomach and all that money you spent on it. Oh my god, and they were introduced right at the same time as imps. Who would say you're silenced and have amnesia, so you literally just have to sit and auto attack? What asshole designed Outergon and said, you know what Final Fantasy XI really needs? Less abilities and spells and more auto attack. It's just too busy. Sorry, that was just years of pent-up frustration coming out, but I want to hear your thoughts. What moves am I missing from this list? It's obviously put together from the point of view of the Summoner, Thief, Dragoon, Tar that I played, but you may have had different struggles over the years. What enemy techniques deserve to be on this list, and which do you think weren't as big of a deal? And question of the week, which Final Fantasy enemy has stayed the absolute worst throughout the series? And have there been any redemptions of enemy types that kind of started crappy but have turned into something more meaningful? And guys, I can't say again, thank you so much for your patience with this one. My PC upgrade could not have gone worse last week, and it took my video editing out of commission for a bit. But I'm happy to be back. If you're new, check me out on Twitch every Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and check out some of the other Final Fantasy XI videos in the playlist if you haven't already. Otherwise, I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in more videos like this, think about subscribing. And if you already have, don't forget to click that little bell next to the sub button to get notified when new videos go live. Hit me up in the comments with your thoughts on this video, or come hang out and chat with me on Twitch every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And definitely look me up on Twitter or Instagram at Hunt for Games to keep up with what else I've got going on. See ya.